It's showtime. Hey, everybody, we are live. We're actually here live. And I want to start out by saying thank you for coming and being in the chat. I really appreciate it. I thank you for being here. But I want to start by saying I was not feeling that great today. But I would like to, and I've mentioned this before, start to become a little bit more consistent and maybe go live on Mondays, even if I don't have anybody to interview. I just had a lot going on right now. And so I think I'm now in a place to where I can, on a regular basis, go live if possible. But today I am not feeling that great. And it took everything in my being to get myself up and get myself dressed for this interview. I mean, I quite literally have done nothing, but this is just so important because I usually interview people, lately I've been interviewing people on their journey off of Suboxone because my whole thing is that there are so many people affected by Suboxone or MAT meds and are stuck and do not and want to come off, but are worried about coming off. They're scared. And so, I think it's important that I bring as much information as I can to the table to help as many people as I can. And the more we can all help each other, the more stories that we bring together, the more knowledge, and knowledge is power. And so I actually created an email list, and I have a website, and I created a landing page, and I was sharing my landing page and encouraging people who are in this fight or have won this fight to subscribe to my emails. And I posted and said, if anybody had any experience with methadone, to please reach out. I've had a couple of people reach out regarding methadone because when I post about my experience about Suboxone and how I came off of it, you wouldn't believe how many people are in my messages wanting to know how to liberate themselves from methadone. And I don't have experience in regards to this medication. So fortunately, when I made that post and posted my landing page on my Unveiling Addiction Facebook page, I had an individual reach out by the name of Rick. And he is here today. And I'm very grateful that he reached out because I wanted to kind of kickstart this off and get going every week. And I would have preferred an interview. But as I mentioned before, I will go live, even if it's just me. But I'm so glad that you're here, Missing Time 420. That makes me feel good. Hopefully you'll get something out of this podcast. We had somebody else hop in here. I'll be asleep when this is live. I'll download it for PT in the morning. Good seeing you. Happy New Year. Yeah, good seeing you too. So I'm going to backstage. I have a gentleman by the name of Rick Faulkner. And he's going to get into his story of how he broke free from methadone. And I'm hoping that this could just help just one person. If we could just help one person, that would be great. So I'm going to bring him here on stage. How are you doing, Rick?
Hey, Chelsea, I'm doing good. Thank you. A little nervous. First time kind of talking about this, and especially publicly, as all of us being addicts, I'm sure it's kind of something that you kind of keep tucked in your back pocket, not something you usually talk about publicly. So,
well, I'm really proud of you for being here and speaking your truth publicly, because the way I see it is, I talk to so many people regularly, and they're stuck on Suboxone, or they're in this addiction and they have nobody to turn to. None of their family knows. People don't know. It's their dark secret in their closet. They have no one, and they reach out to me, and I'm like, this is why. So there's so many people that have this stuck in their back pocket that don't want to share it, which is why I think so many people are struggling, because nobody wants to discuss this, which I get it. But at the same time, if we share our truth, it will definitely help another individual. So Rick, you had mentioned, how did you and I meet? We met at the Day of Being.
Day of Being with Zach Fisher and Sue out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it this year that we met?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm remembering now. Yeah. Well, there's so many people there, right?
There was. And I live right up the road. I'm actually right here in Largo. So I live right up the road from Indian Rocks Beach. Yeah. I'm born and raised here in St. Petersburg. Lived here my whole life.
I didn't know that. So I'm right here in Fort Myers. I'm not far from you at all. Yeah. Yeah. I was actually just in Tampa at St. Pete. Well, I mean, I was there picking up some materials, but anyways, let's get into your story on methadone and how did you start on methadone? I think your story is a little bit different. I think you had mentioned that you started this with your father, but
I
it
did.
wasn't
Yeah.
that you were on pain pills and went and did the methadone to get off pain pills or get off of opiates. You
Yes.
just started methadone
No, it was to get
outright.
off the pain pills.
Oh,
So,
was it?
I'll kind of start. Yeah,
Okay,
I'll go back to.
I'll let you
So,
take over. Okay.
yeah, I got some notes here and stuff to kind of keep myself on track because I tend to
Okay.
wander. So if you notice me wandering, just
I
kind of
will.
reel me back in on there. So,
You bet. Yeah.
I grew up in a household, when I was younger, like smoking weed and stuff was something that just happened. Like I knew the smell of it and stuff before I even knew what it was. It was just
Uh-huh.
kind of something that happened. And my dad's weed guy always came by, and didn't really know when I was a kid. But as I got a little older, it made more sense. But as I became of age, he started smoking, smoking it with my brother and I, my younger brother and I. And once I got about 18 years old or so, he started giving me the opiates, the pain pills. And it was kind of at first given to me as like a motivation to do stuff. Here, try this, to give you energy,
Wow.
and
And
makes
how
you
old were you?
18.
Okay, go ahead.
Um,
Sorry.
yeah, thank you. So, and so start taking the pills, and ironically he ended up being my dealer. Ended up being the one that was selling to me. I was paying $2 a pill, and it was Loratabs for what they
Wow.
were back then. So
Blue, the blue Lortab.
the
Yeah.
bluebird, yeah, the ones with the
Yeah.
specs in them. They're
Right. Oh, wow.
but
Yeah.
yep. So it was that, and it kind of like I said, he was my dealer, and it was that, and it was a tumultuous relationship. Him and my mother split young, and there was a lot of trauma there in the household. I won't talk too much on the trauma, but he also became the one who kind of introduced methadone as an option. It was what he did, and he was taking it and still getting the pills from the doctor, and then selling the pills as a profit. And he's like, this methadone is good. You don't have to worry about it. You're never chasing your high. You get it every day. And back then it was $15 a day was what you paid, I think, $10 a day. And it was a local clinic right there.
What year was
Um,
this?
gosh, it had to be 2001, I want to say.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I just lost my mother tragically right
Okay.
before that. So kind of gravitated to him, and it was an abusive relationship at best, physically as well as this kind of stuff. But story for another time. But pitched it as an idea, and at this time, I guess I was about 22 years old, 21 years old, 22, I want to say, and started going to the methadone clinic. And he taught me real quick the ropes of it. I was still using other drugs like the Xanax and stuff while I was on it, but he taught me how to fake the P tests and
Yeah.
stuff so we
Yeah.
could get take homes with methadone. It's liquid, and you get if you do good and you pass your drug test, you get take homes. And the way it works is they build you up to it all the way up to where you get a full week of take
Right.
homes. So you go
Yeah.
1 day a week, and then you get 6 days worth.
Right.
And what I was taught was that it had a street value because heroin addicts can they can shoot it. You can still um, shoot it. So learn to play the game and get on there. And I was on it for so long. Like I even remember my grandma coming to me and saying, when are you going to get off this stuff? Because the way everyone perceives it as it's kind of like a fix. Kind of like the
Uh-huh.
Suboxone, the same way they sell that stuff to you. It's not something you get on and you stay on. It's something you get
Although this
on
is how
as
they're
a
prescribing it.
yeah, you get
Yeah.
on it as a crutch. Once you wean off of whatever it was that you were on, then we wean you back down.
Right.
And when you go in there to the clinic, you have a counselor, and you always have your counselor that you go in and talk to. They sit you down and do a half-ass job, excuse my language, of,
No, they do.
really diving into
Yeah.
getting to the core root cause of what it
No,
is
they
and
do.
why
And
you're
you
here.
know what? I'm going to chime in just for a second here so we can kind of go back and forth. But but I appreciate that. And when I was going to the Suboxone clinic, I didn't see a counselor for a year, an entire year. So
They did a good job of
so
that.
that resonates. I get it. So go
Yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, they did a good job of that. And the nice thing I liked about the counselors is a lot of them were ex-addicts. I think you mentioned that when you and I were first
We did
talking,
mention that.
but
And we
it's
also
yeah,
mentioned the fact that every single one of these counselors was on Suboxone because I
or
thought
still
this was
are.
something that I wanted to do. They sure are. And I didn't think that I could be a part of it because I was on Suboxone. How could I be a counselor and counsel
Mhm.
somebody else being on this drug? Oh no, we're all on it. I'm like, oh wow, that's kind
It's
of crazy.
fine. It'll be
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
It'll be
You know,
fine.
they're normalizing this, and really it's
Mhm.
just everybody's an autopilot on this drug. But continue.
Yep. So when I was back doing it, like Suboxone wasn't even, there weren't no other options. Like the methadone is what it was. That was the only option to get off the opioids. And the irony of the thing is I'd never done heroin. I never did, like everybody that was there were ex-heroin addicts. You know, you didn't see the opiate addicts on it back then, you know. So the people that were in the line and were in there going weren't my crowd. Like I'm educated guy. I do computers, you know, I went to college, you know, I'm in there, I'm clean cut, you know, I'm not the crowd. And the irony of the situation is it wasn't just me, it was my ex-wife and it was my younger brother that my dad did the same thing to, you know.
12
So
years.
we all three ended up in there.
Wow.
And I say ended up in there. It wasn't like I got drug in there, you know what I mean? I was all in, you know, it wasn't like I was against it.
Yeah, but
But I,
sometimes you kind of take a look around you and you're like, how am I here?
yeah, well, and
Yeah.
it kind of leads to how I got off. But
Okay.
the so I ended up getting, the first time I got all the way up to 120 milligrams, because like what I was saying earlier is it had a street value. So the more you're on, when you got your take homes, the more money you were making. And I was selling it for $1 a milligram. So
Okay.
120 milligrams equaled $120 times six. You know,
Okay.
so that was a lot of money, man. Like if you know, it boiled down to that. With the methadone, you only need 30 milligrams. What they say is anything over 30 is doing the same thing as 30 milligrams,
Okay.
which I don't know, depending on who you talk to, I guess is true or not true. With me, because I wasn't taking the 120 every day, when I would go in and take the 120 a day, it would do a lot. You know, it
Right.
would screw me up. And
Yeah.
I would nod out and stuff. We all know the side
Infamous nod.
effects. Yeah, of
Right.
opiates and like of that. But so 120 milligrams, and I was on it for so long. Like I said, my grandmother at one point said, "Rick, when are you ever going to get off this stuff?" You know, and I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Why would I? You know,
Yeah.
I never am going to get off of it. Why
Isn't
would
that
I get off
something?
of it?" You know,
Right.
and she looked back, just thought I was crazy. You
Yeah.
know, now looking back,
Right.
not so
Isn't that
crazy. So,
something? And it's so interesting. I don't mean to cut you off here,
no,
but
you're good.
you know, sometimes people it's so normalized. You know, like I had mentioned off this out of this excuse me, I'm not feeling that great. But how
You're
like I
good.
mentioned, you know, these doctors are telling patients that, you know, like a diabetic needs insulin, an addict needs Suboxone. So they're
Hmm.
putting this into the minds of people and making people believe that, you know, you need this for the rest of your
Yeah.
life. When we
Well,
do know
yeah,
that it is a root problem. You have to get to the root cause. There is no magical pill that is going to cure or fix or do anything with addiction. I mean, you know, this medication was made because it is supposed to help alleviate or take away the withdrawal symptoms. But now you have, you know, millions of people, you know, physically stuck that don't want to be on it, but are too afraid. There are more people stuck that don't want to be on it and are just too afraid to go through that process than the opposite.
I
Okay.
think a lot of it too is the stigma. You know, people don't want to talk about it. It's embarrassing. You know,
That's
like
exactly
you.
it, and that's exactly why we're doing what we're doing, because it
Mhm.
became very clear to me when I started on this journey and I started posting this content and I started posting my live video of all my like I would go live, I would do videos of when I was going through withdrawals, getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, all of it. I videoed all of it and what I was feeling and what I was experiencing. And it became very clear that there were so many. I mean, it almost seems like sometimes that the whole damn country is hopped up on either Suboxone or Sublocade. And it's
Something.
not just, you know, people want to look at this as like, oh, it's just, an addict, you know, some crackhead, whatever. No, this doctors are prescribing this wrongfully. I mean, like they do with everything. But I mean, I have been working with this individual that is a CEO of a tech company, and she's has a high functioning job. So she's not just some junky, you know, piece of, I mean, she's stuck. And she actually is in the process of coming off. I think she's on month 4, but I mean, she came off from 6 milligrams. So it's a little bit harder on her because she didn't taper down. But again, her doctor told her that he knew what he was doing and told her this is how she was going to come off of it because he had gotten a lot of people off in prison. And she's like, I'm sorry, but you don't know what the hell you're doing. She tells me I've gained more information and I've had better
Mhm.
conversations with you than I have my own
Mhm.
doctor. I said, yeah, because your doctor doesn't know shit except for what he read. And so I
Mhm.
did this to you too, that I've been creating like group chats of people that are in, that are all in the same fight to share their experiences, what they know is going to come, but I didn't mean to interrupt you,
No,
but
don't
yeah,
be sorry.
continue. I just, I just find it interesting that multiple people will tell me, yeah, my doctor told me that I'm like a diabetic needs insulin, an addict needs Suboxone. That's madness. That's insane.
Mhm.
And they're literally on autopilot. And it's like all they go to the clinic, they get their methadone, they're in autopilot every single day. This is what they do. And then here they go, they come across a TikTok of me saying, oh, it doesn't have to be this way. You can find, and it's like, oh, you know, okay, maybe that is what I want to do. And it's like sometimes all they just need to hear is something like this, to kind of
Mhm.
snap and be like, damn, okay, let me try to take matters back into my own hand and break free from this ball and chain.
And they label it, you nailed it, Chastity. They label addiction as a disease. They'll straight up say it to you, like it's your disease, it's what it is. And in your mind, that stigma, a disease is gonna need a cure and this must be the cure. Like
Isn't
what
that
else is
crazy?
it? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. But
And
go ahead and continue. I didn't mean
yeah,
to.
sure. No,
Um,
you're good. I needed to
so you
take a
were,
break there anyway. So I'll go back. So, back to, selling it. It was 120 milligrams. And that went on. Like I said, I never envisioned myself getting off of it. But then there was a tragic event. My father was driving with my ex-wife, and they were on the way to my ex-mother-in-law's, and they were on the methadone and taking the Xanax, and he nodded out like he always would, and ended up flipping his truck and got ejected from the truck and ended up quadriplegic and ended up in a hospital bed in his home. And by that point,
that's
I had realized that the relationship was toxic, and I
so
had pretty
that
much.
that's right, Rick. You did that was your dad, right? Your dad who
Hmm.
introduced this to you, who
Hmm.
introduced. Okay, that's right, because we had
Hmm.
that in common. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so ended up quadriplegic, and you know, uh, I'm a sensitive. I ended up being his caregiver. I ended up being nobody would. He had pushed everybody away,
Right.
and he was toxic. Even his family, there was no one there, and I stepped up, and I ended up being the caregiver, and they were giving him Roxy's at the time, and it got to the point where even the methadone, even the $15 a day, became too expensive. And that was the first time I got off, and it was weaned off by him just giving me like a half of one of the Roxys or whatever it was a day.
Okay.
And when I got off of it, it takes about I've done it a couple. I've done it a couple times. It takes about 2 weeks for the withdrawal. The withdrawals are freaking horrible. It's probably
Okay.
the worst,
Why don't
worst
you
pain, worst
share?
pain.
Would you share some of the withdrawal symptoms? Because
Yeah,
like I said, I don't have experience with
so it's
methadone.
body
And
aches, so a lot of
yeah,
real body aches and
yep.
muscle cramps, muscle
Okay.
tightness. Like I've still experienced some of it to this day. Like my muscles, my tendons and my muscles don't stretch out the way they should. I'm in constant pain, like all the time. All my neck. I see a chiropractor every week. I get massages 2 and 3 times a month still, just because the circulation doesn't flow the way that it
Okay.
should from the damage
What
that I did
about
to my
hot and cold sweats?
a lot of hot and cold sweats. So the cold
Okay.
sweat, no hot, just the cold sweats. That,
Okay.
and it would last about 2 weeks was what it
Okay.
would be, but it was intense and pain, a lot of pain, more so the physical pain than the mental pain. But the pain pills helped with that,
Okay.
with the physical pain, and that's what was good. But it was a high dose that I went off of. But ended up being there caring for him, and he was in a halo. He had a halo on, and I had to feed him. He couldn't use his hands. I had to feed him. I had to wipe his rear end. I learned how to change his catheter and do all the stuff. What's happening, Calyx?
So let me just let me just chime in. So your dad who got you kind of hooked on all this in the first place had a horrible accident. And so
So
now he kind of went, now he needs your help and you're taking care of him. This is so interesting because this is quite literally very parallel to my mother and myself. My mother and I used to go doctor hop together, and I wouldn't say she introduced it to me. We were both doing it though. And then my mother fell 60 feet over a balcony, and I put my life on pause and cared for her as well. And I was
oh
cleaning up
wow,
my act.
how
Yeah.
about that?
And I know. And I was cleaning up my act, but yet still distributing the medication to her. And I was like, I can't keep doing this.
Mhm.
So to be clear, you used Roxy's, which is like oxycodone, to
Oxycodone,
get
so yeah,
yourself off of the methadone.
correct.
What
Yeah.
was it about that time where you were like, I'm done with the methadone? Why you were just kind of wanting to clean up your act so that you could be there and care for your dad?
Yeah, that and just the financial burden of it. Like I wasn't able to work anymore. The money that we had to support the household I would say more at that time, it was more out of necessity.
Okay.
And it wasn't so much a driving for it. I was fed up with it. I was tired of it, obviously. But
Okay. I'm really glad that we did this interview. How funny, how interesting that we both have a lot of parallels with this. I mean, your dad
Mhm.
became a quadriplegic, my mother became a paraplegic. We both put our lives on hold to care for them. They were the ones that
The
introduced us.
abusers.
That's so fascinating. That's so
Ironically.
interesting. Okay, go ahead. So you had one attempt to come off of the methadone. You used Roxy's to do that. So were you
And I got
successful?
clean. Like I got all the way off at that
Okay,
point, and even to where the Roxy's, I didn't need those anymore. And
good for
it
you.
was, yeah, it was triumphant. Like I felt good. But
Okay,
what ended up happening is it was like I literally lost time being there caring for him, and I anticipated him walking again because he was a tough guy, and
right.
so I was exercising his legs. I was doing all the stuff, and at some point, Medicaid quit paying for everything. And I'm I'm a smart guy. I figured out how to do it. I was replacing catheters. I was doing the stuff. They come in, they taught me. I learned how to do it. It's fine
Wow.
because I knew it was going to run out. But it ended up being where his body started to quit and gave out. So his stomach distended, and he ended up in the hospital a bunch of times. And the final time, I ended up having to make the decision to pull the plug.
Oh,
But while he was in the hospital bed, my brother, who I mentioned earlier, that he also got on the methadone, ended up overdosing from the methadone, being on the drugs. He was taking the methadone and using the Xanax and stuff, and ended up ODing from it. Kind of as a result, he was a little closer with my father and kind of looked up to him and stuff.
right.
So he was younger than I, and they both kind of had a similar path. My father and I, not so much. I took a different path, but
So your dad passed away. So you went through some pretty traumatic stuff, which I would imagine you're about to tell me kind of led you back on methadone.
I went right back. I was like, screw it. I figured I was next. It's like that type of thing. I'd
Wow.
kind of given up. I didn't have a
Okay.
job at that point. I was at rock. If you call it a rock bottom, I was at rock bottom.
Were you?
That was
And
rock
where were
bottom.
you going, your methadone clinic to get more to that's you were just going back at the methadone clinic again?
So I went back to the methadone clinic and I did what I was taught. I went and got clean pee and got jacked up on the milligrams. This time I got all the way up to 180 milligrams, and I'm not that big of a guy.
No.
They'd look at me and say, how are you walking around on 180 milligrams?"
But yet still give it to you.
Still give it to me.
Of course
I
they
got all the way
would.
up to 180, and I was getting the take home. So I was taking home 6 bottles of it.
Wow.
So not only taking home 6 bottles. So there was my money. I solved that problem,
Right.
the way I was taught, what I was taught to do.
Yeah.
But so ended up back in a caregiver role. Stayed with a friend of mine who was a girl, who was also a drug addict, and she had gotten into the heroin and stuff, but ended up taking care of her and staying there at her house. But I was there at the clinic one day, and I just had enough. Like my body couldn't take it anymore, and I was in the line, waiting, and I blacked out. I don't know if it was a panic attack, what it was, divine
Interesting.
intervention, what
Yeah.
it may be, but I hadn't taken anything, and it was. I call it divine intervention in my story, but ended up in PIMS, which is a treatment center here in Pinellas County. It's kind of like where they take the addicts and stuff. And usually, when people end up in there, they're street people with records and stuff. I have a clean record. I've always
Right.
had good jobs. I have a college education.
Right.
I'm not the typical
Right, but you
person.
see, that's like, the stereotyping that goes on,
Hmm.
right? It's like, "Oh, we're just all a bunch of junkies with we're all
Exactly.
low lives, we're all," and that's
Hmm.
exactly it. That's
Yeah.
exactly why they're like, "Oh, here's the Suboxone for all these addict junkies." Like, I've
Hmm.
had comments in some of my, and I had comments on some of my videos. They're like, "Well, that's what you get for being an addict," or,
Yeah.
"Well, that's what you get," and I'm
Mhm.
like, "You know what? I send you nothing but love because that's disgusting comment. That's so
Yeah.
disgusting. You have no idea." But also, I don't even take it personal because I'm like, you know what? You are just that's societal programming at its
It
finest.
is.
You're
It
not you're
is.
not thinking for yourself at all.
Mhm.
You are, I mean, and if you watch, like, it's interesting kind of going back and watching certain shows like, Breaking Bad, right? Or, like, well, where I'm going with this is how they do this, like with addicts and stuff, and the way that they perceive, or the way that they treat addicts, or even Nurse Jackie. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the way that they
Mhm.
portray a person addiction or whatever, you know what I mean? It's quite disgusting. But I don't take that shit personal. You know what I mean? Because it's like,
Mhm.
that's societal programming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, Calix. That's very see. It doesn't bother me any. I'm like, that's just, I don't. I'm like, that's gross. That's a gross video. That's a
Mhm.
gross comment, and I feel sorry because you're ignorant. That comment is very ignorant. It's very just ew. But anyways, let's get back to your story because it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Um,
So at that point, yeah, like I said, I'm on 180 milligrams. I'm there, and I think I skipped past one part. At this point, I had separated with my ex-wife. She had gone worse into the drugs and started doing the heroin and crack and stuff. And
oh
I'm like,
wow.
listen, I'm not for that shit. I'm
Yeah,
not doing
I went
that,
down
man,
that road.
because I know what ends up. You're going to end up in the anyway. So I didn't, and
Well, I let me tell you, you are right about that because I did go down the crack road, believe it or not. I went down that for a little while.
I
But one
smoked it
road,
too. Don't get me
did you?
wrong.
Well,
Yeah,
no, I went
yeah.
down it for a while. But one road that I would never, I've shot up heroin a few times, but there is something in my being that knew, like, no, you can't go down that route because you like to numb way too much and escape way too much. That if you do this, you will end up dead. And I
Mm,
knew that there was a bigger purpose and that wasn't supposed to be my end game. You know what I
one, yeah.
mean? It was like, yeah. So, anyways, so it's interesting because it's like you are surrounded by this kind of energy
Well,
with the
and I watched people die from it at that point. Like I
right.
lost a lot of buddies from school to heroin, and that, and I'm like, shit, no, I'm not doing
Same.
that, man. I
Yeah,
watched them all.
especially when these pill mills started popping.
Mhm.
I've been to over 20 funerals. I can probably name right now like 8 people off the
Same,
top of my hand.
same.
Yeah, that all overdosed on pills from going to these pill mills that were all over Houston. So yeah, I became very numb to death, so to speak. I believe we are
Same.
immortal,
Yeah.
eternal beings, but that death as far as this physical meat suit, right? So go ahead. Thank you.
So yeah, you're welcome. So at that point it was 180 milligrams,
Okay.
and I went off cold turkey at that point again, and ended up, like I said, in PIMS. They put me on an anti-anxiety pill, um, Ativan. Ativan
Oh,
was the anxiety pill, and it helped. Like it helped
yeah.
me distract my mind. But I'll tell you what ended up, Chastity, for me that did it. At that point, I made the decision that I was cutting all ties. I had separated with the ex, and she was kind of a major part of it. Not kind of, she was a
What?
major part of it. My
Right.
brother had died. Like all my connections to
Wow.
it had died, and I was freaking done.
Yeah.
So what I did, I changed my phone number, I changed my address, I completely disconnected from every person,
Okay.
every place, everything, anything that was connected to it, and I
And
moved
this was
in.
after your blackout, right? I don't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt
it
you.
was
I just
after
want
the
to be clear.
blackout.
I'm loving your story right now. It's really
Mhm.
awesome. But this was after your blackout, your kind
Yes,
of
it
intervention.
was.
You went
Yep.
to
So it
rehab.
was
You were done with it.
Yep,
Fantastic.
they put me on the Ativan. I got into
Okay.
a good doctor, and I changed the circle, and I never looked back. Like,
Yeah.
people would try to find me, but I intentionally made it where I wasn't findable. I
Okay.
wasn't, and I'm still that way. Like, I don't let the past. I'm not interested in that version of what happened, but a lot of it at that point became mind over matter. Like, I knew what it took to get off of it. I knew how long the withdrawals would take. I knew what the withdrawals entailed. I knew what it was going to be. And once I got past a certain point and had a support system around me that weren't drug addicts, that it wasn't the norm,
Yeah.
that it wasn't, this isn't what we do. And I thank the Lord daily that I didn't
It,
end up with a record or end up, with something like the rest of them, or God forbid, dead.
right. Isn't it crazy how it's so like it is who you surround yourself with,
It
right?
is
So it's
people,
like
places, and things, man. It's
it is.
exactly what they
It
say.
most certainly is. And you're like, and then when you get away from that, you're like, that's, snorting this or smoking that in the corner.
Hmm.
That's not normal. But when you were active in it with or
Hmm.
surrounded by people that were doing it, it was so normal and it's not
Hmm.
normal.
And
That's so interesting. So, question. So, I kind of want to hone in on how you broke free from the methadone. So they gave you Ativan, right? And so what did you do?
correct.
Did you taper down? Did you get off of it in the rehab?
So I
How
did,
let's kind
I
of
did.
walk. Okay, if somebody was in this chat right now, or somebody was looking at watching this video and they're like on methadone, okay, what would you tell them that you did to break free from this shit? And you are correct. It is mind over matter. It definitely is. You have to be 100% ready to break free. You have to freaking be ready.
You
It's
just nailed it.
doable.
I would say that it has to be your mindset and it has to be your
Right.
decision to do it. And I don't believe in what they do and tapering you off of it and bringing you down, because it's going to, they even tell you it when you're going on methadone, whether you're on 30 milligrams or 100 milligrams, the effects are the same. So when you're coming off of it, it's the same shit. So whether they're saying, oh, taper down and then you get off of it, it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same effect. And then the Suboxone started coming around towards the end. And I apologize, I lost the timeline there, but I
That's
was on
okay.
it 15 years altogether that I was
Methadone.
on the
Okay.
methadone. Yeah. So
Okay.
15 years. And
Yeah.
I'm on my 11th year now of being clean. But Chastity, and this isn't going to be a great, I mean, I don't have a magic remedy. It was mind over matter, is what it
Right.
was.
No, I
And
know.
I
There's no magic
disconnected.
remedy. I'm just
I
curious take me down the road of how if you were on that high dose,
Okay,
what did you
so
do?
so my body went through it all again, same stuff. This time I knew what to expect because I had done it before, but this time I got smart. I started working out. I started
Yeah.
drinking a lot of water. I took a
Yeah.
lot of vitamins. I did that stuff.
Okay.
I started going the healthy route. I was eating better. I was making sure that I was getting quiet in my mind. I turned off the distractions. I quit watching news back then. I haven't watched a news. I couldn't tell you the first thing going on in this country. I haven't watched. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you anything going on. I couldn't tell you the first Trump thing. I hear it. When I travel to other countries, they look at, oh, you're from America, ha ha ha, Trump, and I'm like, I don't get
I
it.
don't know.
I don't know. I don't participate. So what I did is I unplugged. I didn't just unplug from the people, place, and thing. I unplugged from freaking society.
Love
I
it.
honed down. I put my head down, my shoulders square, as I always say, and I dug into myself. I got healthy. I started working out. I drank a lot of water. I got a dog. I started walking. I was living with my grandmother. I started caring for her. Um, I
It's
started
making
doing
me
the things that are
emotional.
important to me. And as crazy as it sounds, she would always say it. She would always tell me she got high on sunshine. So
Oh,
I started getting high on sunshine with my grandmother.
I love that.
And
I
I
can
still do. I go
sense
ground.
you
I
using
put my feet
that.
in the ground.
Yeah.
And while I was living there with her, now like I was telling you earlier, I supervise a nationwide dispatch call center. I spend all my extra money traveling the world. I've been to South America twice, the Dominican Republic, Ireland, Bulgaria, Greece. I travel all over the United States to do training. I just got back from Ohio. I was up there doing training for 6 weeks, North Carolina. I set up the computers, I teach the training, what I do. I found me a great woman. I never had kids. I found me a great woman with 3 kids, and I
Oh,
started investing my time into these boys, and teaching them the right way to do things.
beautiful.
You might tear up a little saying it, but not the way I was taught.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know I'm getting emotional too. I'm getting emotional too. I'm super proud of you. Um,
Um,
that's awesome.
and
So,
this is the next step, giving back, and just, even if it's not exactly the story and I don't have the exact remedy,
okay.
I started diving into consciousness, man, and I went in and I learned about left brain and right brain. I found out what the pineal gland was. I started decalcifying that deal, man, and like I said, turned off the media, got rid of that, unplugged. And like you said earlier, Chastity, it's a machine, man. Everything is money. What I do these days, I always find the money, man. They
Mhm.
always want you back to that money. They want you in there in that methadone clinic because it's profitable,
That's right.
period.
That's
And they
right.
want you on the
Everything
Suboxone because it's another crutch. I don't
that's
take any pharmaceuticals.
nope.
I don't take anything. Nada. I got off the Ativan. I kicked that with the same mindset I
Good.
did with the methadone, mind over
Oh,
matter. Um,
that's beautiful. Everything about that made me emotional because it's so beautiful, because it's so your story is so similar in every way to mine. It's so fascinating. Because when I started, I had a massive spiritual awakening. I went through so much shit, very much like you. I lost my
mhm,
daughter. I had cancer, all this shit, right? I don't even want to,
mhm,
but it was so interesting. I went through this period of time where I was like sleeping a lot. I was super, but I realized I think there was like a soul that was kind of integrating to help me get through all this. So I was sleeping that during that integration. At the time I thought, I'm just depressed, da 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 da. But as I have grown and reflected and meditated and just, I realized that at that time of my life that I was sleeping, I was integrating a soul that was going to help me through the rest of the way so that I could finish this mission. Because I'm like, now all of a sudden I got what it takes to overcome this shit. And I quite literally just went through the most traumatic shit like the past few years, but now I'm good. Like, it's very interesting. And and very much like you, I started meditating every single day, and I started getting in touch with my intuition, and I cut off all the distraction, and I started spending time in nature, and I started getting in.
so
I've always loved the sun, but I started watching the sun come up every single day. I started getting in
grounding.
touch with
Yeah.
my soul and getting in touch. I mean, that was it. You have a version of yourself that knows the answers to quite literally everything. You just have to get in touch with that.
Get
And
quiet enough to hear the
get
answers.
quiet enough
Exactly.
to hear it, and it'll guide you. And I do have a lot of people that are like, what'd you do? There's no one way to do any of this. Everybody's going to have their own journey and their own method. And the one thing I tell people is the most important thing: get in touch with you, get in touch with your soul, get in touch with your intuition, because that higher version of you will guide you and show
Yeah.
you what to do. It'll tell you
No.
exactly what to do. So you keep saying I don't have I didn't even really either. I was kind of like raw dogging it. I was kind of like, just, I had attempted it before. I had quite a few unsuccessful attempts. But the difference about this attempt here was I was guided by my intuition. I was guided by my intuition because I started cutting out all the noise and getting in
The
tune with myself,
distractions.
and it
Yeah.
guided me through that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it will. You have to ask for help, though, guys. And that's the one thing I will say is,
Yeah.
they can't intervene. We have free will here on this plane. So if you want intervention, ask your spirit guides to intervene. Man, this
That's
stuff
right.
is real. It's
Yeah,
true.
it definitely is. I remember a few times that I would be in the shower, and it was before I was in the shower withdrawing, having the worst withdrawals off of Suboxone. It was when I raw dogged coming off of 8 milligrams. And I remember just crying and crying and, oh, please help me, please. You know what I mean? Instead of, but this was at the very beginning of all of this, right? I hadn't really stepped into myself quite yet. I do have a question for you though. So I just,
Mhm.
so you basically tapered down, right? So, coming off of methadone, and this is exactly what I tell everybody. I'm like, I would imagine coming off of methadone is very similar to any pharmaceutical, Suboxone, whatever. You just have to take it slow. You just
Bring
have to
down.
taper and get in touch with your intuition, so your intuition will guide you. But you
Mhm.
had mentioned that you were using Ativan through this process. How long was this process? How long did it take you to break free from it and like eventually break free from the Ativan?
About 3 years.
Okay.
And at one point they put me on an antidepressant also because I started to have some other effects in other places of my body. And I apologize.
Interesting.
I don't remember what the antidepressant was, but at this point I'm like, I don't, the people that say the poison aren't going to say the cure. They're just not, and because it's not profitable. It's not profitable for you to not. So, I mean, I
Right.
became convinced that they wanted me on something
They
regardless,
do.
no matter what it was.
They do.
I just kept diving in deep, man.
Yeah.
And,
I love it.
I don't know. I guess what gave me purpose is, I got a good job, and I don't, like I said, I kind of dove into it and went past it, but I got a good job. I ended up having these boys, and I became a role model. I never was, and
Right.
I knew what a bad role model was. I knew what I didn't want to be,
Right. And
and
that's so interesting that we both like, here our parents are introducing us to this shit. They literally their whole world gets flipped upside down. And, we're just like, oh, we step in and we're like, okay, we got you. I mean, but it just kind of it's just so fascinating to me that you and I, our stories quite literally parallel. We're definitely connected for a reason.
no
So
doubt about that, man,
that's
for
awesome.
sure. And I want to help too, man. I love what you're doing, Chelsea. This is
Thank
awesome.
you.
So,
Thank you.
if I could say anything to anybody, it's go within. They say it a lot. You hear it a lot that the only way you're going to find the answers is inside yourself. And it sounded hocus pocus in the beginning, and it sounded silly, but it's so true.
It
You
is.
just have to be able to quiet the noise, man. Quiet the noise enough. If I could say anything, get the fluoride out of your damn water. I got reverse osmosis water. I quit using fluoride toothpaste. I turn off that excuse my language, that damn news, because
Yeah,
nobody need to hear about everybody that died
that's
today
right.
and what car accident there
Yeah,
was and what war they're going to start doing on there. And the sooner we all unplug from that collective fear machine,
right.
the sooner we're all going to rise as a society. And I think
Love that.
that's the most important thing to
Love
take
that.
away from any of this is that is what helped me because I ain't scared no more. They had me
That's right.
scared for a long time.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
no,
they
no.
like us to operate in fear because when we're in fear and we're in fight or flight, we can't make
Mhm,
rational decisions, which is
mhm,
why you have millions of people stuck on on Suboxone,
mhm.
and they're fearful, they're fear to come off. And so they're so out of touch with their self, they're on autopilot, and
Yep.
they're okay with being on this the rest of their life because they don't know any different, they haven't or heard any different. They just this is okay and this is normalized because this is where they're surrounded their self with, which is exactly why I will continue to do what I'm doing and continue
Yeah.
to post about it and continue on and on and on and on because there are quite literally millions that want to be.
Yes.
And so we're gonna do that. My goal after everything I went through with my mother, big pharma. I didn't know what I was up against when she fell 60 feet over a balcony. She was paralyzed. I don't know about you, but they tried pain pump stimulators, every procedure, every
Mhm.
medication, every this, every that. None of it worked. If anything, it all just made everything so much worse. And my mother tried out for Survivor. My mother worked out every day. She was
She was
very
in
much,
shape.
yeah, she
Mhm.
was a freaking warrior. I mean, she was, um, sorry.
Well, as are you, and good for you for taking the good parts. That's what I've
Yeah,
done. My father was a great dad. He was so good. So they call it shadow work
right.
in this
But
sense. I
my
take
goal, Mike, I
yeah,
didn't mean to interrupt you, but my goal,
I
because
interrupted you.
no, it's okay. I needed you to, I think, kind of step in. I was getting a little bit
Mhm.
emotional. I think you could feel that.
Mhm.
But I'm like, I am going to throw a wrench in big pharma. I'm gonna get so many people to wake up and take their power back that I want to see that what I have done has caused a dent in
Hell
it.
yeah. That's what's up. I
Yeah,
agree.
that's what I
I'm
want to do.
in. Count
Yeah.
me in, man.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
You're
I
welcome.
wasn't feeling great. And I'm like, oh gosh, no, I got to push through. I got to do this. But I am so, so glad that I
Me
did
too.
because this was amazing. I really enjoyed this interview, Rick. Thank you
I
so
did as
much.
well.
And
Yeah, you're
I'm going to
welcome,
make
and
a
thank
post.
you.
I'm usually will make a post ahead of time that, hey, I'm having a guy on, da da da. But I just not been feeling great. But I'm about to post and let people know that I interviewed an individual coming off of methadone, and you said all the right things. I mean, everything was wonderful. So thank you so much for coming on
Hey,
today.
have me back, man. I'll come
I
back.
definitely
Get some
will. We
more
can
people
get
in
in.
here. They want to talk about it. I'll talk about it. I love talking. That's what I do.
I love it too. Thank you everybody that popped in the chat today. I really appreciate you guys being here, and stay tuned. I will be going live every single Monday moving forward. So this is me saying it out loud. So I will hold my ass accountable and do it. All right. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much.